vocal warm-ups are very, very, very important because I've not actually dropped a video in a very long time. But one thing that has not changed is that I'm still fervently eating porridge. And while I was eating aforementioned food, of course, I will point out right now that it was Quakers. Does that focus well? I'll point out right now that all the packaging was fully recyclable. I ensured I didn't waste any of it. There's like a little drop left, right? Um, and that it was as eco-friendly as possible. I went to Poundland, which is where you should go. In any free market, large scale capitalist society, I believe you should abuse Poundland as much as possible. If you are going to buy into the system, don't spend too much money, right? But anyway, while I was, that might be relevant. While I was eating porridge, and over the past few months, maybe a year, especially being in China, for example, ooh, I went to China. Um, there's this constant chewing over the thought of the trade-off. I probably mentioned this before. I'm pretty sure I've mentioned it before. Either this or on blogs. It's been a while. And the idea that for true change to happen, or for the things we benefit from, there's often something we miss out on. An easy one is, like in terms of just general what we call progress. Yeah, actually, there's a blog. There's a blog. It should be down there. Um, the idea of we have progress and like overall things improve. Overall more people are a bit more healthy. Overall more people will say connected through the internet. However, we take certain losses, i.e., a big one is the availability of the internet and everything to be able to connect with things that you find in common also means that the liability to be stuck in one's echo chamber is perhaps higher than it was before, because you can now self cultivate everything you consume, which is brilliant because it helps to, push for more self actualization. However, the other issue of constant reiteration of your own thoughts or own beliefs, and you have to really push yourself outside of your barrier. A bit like how I'm, very very close up right now, and if I even put my hands up a bit further out of the frame, I suddenly am very far away. Like my hand isn't even that far away, but now it's like miles out the frame. To use a simple example. Anyway, enough of the tangents. Um, Long story short, um, someone has to take the L for progress to happen. And this was clear, obviously, when we look at, me being a Londoner, a Londoner that also works outside and is dependent not just to get to work on the underground train system or the public transport system being relatively reliable, but actually reliable while I'm at work because I travel around the city every day. So to see what we will be very clear was a minority of people uh, within the Extinction Rebellion movement actually push on past the street protests into disruption of the underground network, for example, or at least attempted disruption. I assume you've probably seen, if you've seen this video, you've probably seen the footage of commuters of some sort making an effort to like actually drag them down, or don't fuck with my trains, just do what you want, do what you want, like in Trafalgar Square or Parliament Square, but don't fuck with my trains, car, you know. um, and of course, there's many takes. That the basic take is, oh, okay, we get it. Environment, of course, is a very important thing. Like I just mentioned, recyclable packaging, big deal. That's why I'm eating mostly Oreos, because they're vegan and they have recyclable packaging. Um, but we don't believe this is a productive way to go about protesting, and that's the interesting thing. There's always a talk about how ought we protest. So that's that one take, right? The second take, of course, is how productive is this thing, given that how many MPs actually take the tube, and we'll see this and be affected by it. How many people are actually harming that could be on your side? The idea of saving the planet for people is like to be on your side, and people have released those statements saying, "Hey, like most of us didn't agree with this because why are we stopping people in East London or other places get to the city? A lot of these people, some of these people, doing night shifts and then trying to drop off their kids to school. These are the people you have to get on side. These are the masses. If you're talking about stopping like economic growth of those who are phlegmatic to the cause of the environment and whatnot, then maybe we should let these people on and then protest at their workplaces, perhaps. But anyway, so that's take number two. And obviously, take number three, which is quite an important one, is related to the socioeconomic issues of the fact that some people can't even afford to protest because of the nature of the society we live in, where they're dropping off that night shift because that's the job that was going at that time, and they need some kind of income stability. Otherwise, things get really hard. Or some people are even here just for the sake of a work visa, so they can't jeopardize that at all. I know what that feels like. Not trying to do anything to jeopardize just your ability to stay in a country. And you can't jeopardize that work visa, especially now. There's obviously the dubious nature of what could happen in the Brexit negotiations as well. So nothing is guaranteed. So can I at least guarantee my train, can I at least get to work and do these things? And the fact that I have to do this while the people who probably employ me can afford to take a cab or taxi or even buy their own hybrid vehicle or bicycle, or pay one of those guys around Oxford Circus to like ride them off. But anyway, so that's obviously the three big takes, or most important takes. And obviously the thing that revolves once and once more is that someone has to lose out on something in order for true progress to be made. And the problem that often happens, it's the employee, not the employer, where I guess the image you see of austerity measures being thrust upon us, one would hope that it's thrust upon all of us. You look back, it's a long time ago though, isn't it? You look back to 2010, Nick Clegg and David Cameron cut their own salaries by 5%. In terms, and I don't know if they invited other people to do the same. But then when you saw that, maybe that was a lot more in line with what people thought of austerity measures. Okay, you cut your salary, and then maybe we'll go through a couple of cuts ourselves to our very, very important services like education, and I'd also argue things like arts and crafts and the accessibility to self-actualization that they provide. But anyway, and then from that point onwards, it's been hard to see any clear, blatant moves by the governing elite to actually follow through with the austerity measures. That on top of things like how much can we invest in, and then you look at things like our dependence on, say, selling arms to Saudi Arabia and all these other little things we do that are highly dubious. And think at one point we have to make the loss. For example, taking that example of selling arms to Saudi Arabia, we have to either accept the fact that we're kind of scum, or like I said, they lost the court case against Amnesty International, for example, so no longer allowed to sell arms to Saudi Arabia. But then that comes with the loss of economic stability. I mean, it's that one trick pony thing where we did that trick really well, selling arms. And if we can't continue to do that, then we miss out on a good chunk of money. I can't remember if it's like numbers in the billions or something like that. You want to quantify that as amounts of bread or amounts of rehabilitation centers you can set up with that money. Yeah, and maybe that's the question everyone says, oh, we're spending money on this, we should be spending on money on this. And it's the idea of, people forget that each department has different funding and it's quite segmented. And that is a point to make still, like, oh, why couldn't we prioritize this over this? But why ought we have the situation where it's like an X factor for each department? Like, Department of Tourism has to fight against the Department of, like, I don't know, education for an extra 10% in funding. And only one of them can get it. And, the audience vote, but also the judges vote. So the four judges, House of Lords, the unelected ones, have to vote, and then, then the audience get to have their vote too, in our random elections, and obviously, technically via the, elected members of parliament we have. And I think there's this whole question of competition and being put against each other that will naturally promote issues and then reiterate the fact that we have to all be ready to accept the L, but also fight for what is left afterwards. I always hypothesize that in times of austerity, no matter what, you should keep a consistent stream of funding and facilitation, whether that be economic or otherwise, to healthcare, education, um, some form of community-based things, so that we actually have something worth saving afterwards. You know, and maybe that's a deep question as well. On top of everything else, is have we taken an L big enough for us to truly accept? Because we still all have things to lose. We all have a job to lose. We still have something to lose. Obviously, I can't believe I'm doing this. But like back in back in World War Two, Jesus, back in like those days, right? If you're on the winning side of the war, you're still on the rations. If you're on the losing side of the war, say Germany, if you hear about how Franz Beckenbauer grew up, he's like everyone was chill because we had nothing. Literally destroyed, like destruction and everything like that. So like the idea is they faced certain undeniable destruction. The biggest L possible. Like the idea of taking an L is that you actually have a body, a corpus in which you can hold that L. And Germany didn't even have that anymore. They couldn't even hold the L like they could back in 1919 or 18, depending on who you ask. And maybe that's the most important thing, that arguably time and time again we have to be able to get to the point of facing our extinction, wink wink, um, before we make a real change. And which is why everyone was very supportive of ecological movements like Extinction Rebellion, because we want to do that preemptively before it's too late. Like I come with Ash Shakar of Twitter fame, and I guess she does other things, talks about I don't want to be in a situation where I have to guard my water with a sniper rifle. And then if we can get to that point of serious approach before that, cool. But we have to also get very serious about the fact that we have to hold some L's while we still have hands to hold them. And I guess that's the most important thing to face up. And of course, naturally, these issues are going to be thrust once again upon those most vulnerable. And that's the biggest issue we have to look at and approach. That the thinking that got us into this and the approaches to our society have to change along with our movements to save ourselves, whether it be through the environment or through economics or through very serious issues like the Uyghurs in China. See, I can say these things freely now because isn't it great? Isn't it great? I can freely talk. I can always freely talk about these things. It's just actually it's easier to get more information when you don't have to run through a VPN, and go to Xi'an and seeing like an armored car. Xi'an being the Western capital, where there's a lot more like Muslim numbers. What's the word? Demographic. A higher percentage of Muslim people, practicing Muslims, and Uyghurs. Seeing an armored car in the middle of town, for example, you'd never see that even in Shanghai or even in Beijing. Here I am once again going with a tangent, but quite an important one. That for that to really change, like the situation we have with the environment, or the fact that people have to fight someone to get off the train just so they can get to work, a job they may not even like. We have to be willing to lose something, which is annoying because you bought into the system. As Rue Reynolds said, we've invested in a system that is beyond repair. Nothing could fix this system's flawed foundations. There's something in its laws where it's laws and legislations, something. I haven't listened into Shikari in a while, but that's the reality, and that is painful but also very liberating. An L can be in liberation. I lost my job in China and it allowed me to go to Bangkok and have fun and technically set up for the job I have now. So yeah, fun, isn't it? loss,